A routine morning coffee turns into a national incident when a small-town cop slaps handcuffs on a decorated black Navy SEAL, accusing him of stolen valor. But as the jail cell door slams shut, the precinct's phone rings. On the other line, the Pentagon, and they are not happy. It was a crisp Tuesday morning in November when Chief Petty Officer Nathaniel Reed pushed open the glass door of the rusty Anchor diner. The bells attached to the handle chimed, announcing his arrival to a room filled with the scent of bacon, stale coffee, and quiet, small-town murmurs. Prescott, Arizona, was a long way from the crashing waves of Coronado, and even further from the sun-baked mountains of Afghanistan, where Nathaniel had spent the better part of his adult life. At 38, Nathaniel had served 15 years in the United States Navy, with 12 of those years operating in the shadows as a Tier 1 operator on a SEAL team. He wasn't in Prescott for a mission. He was there for a much heavier duty, visiting the widow of Gregory Harrison, a teammate and brother-in-arms who had paid the ultimate price during a night raid 2 years prior. Nathaniel was a man who preferred to blend in. He was tall, powerfully built, but moved with a quiet grace that didn't draw the eye. His dark skin contrasted sharply with the faded olive-drab fleece jacket he wore against the morning chill. On the left breast of that jacket rested a small, subdued gold trident pin, the only outward sign of the life he led. It wasn't worn for boasting. It was worn today out of respect for Gregory. He took a seat in a corner booth, facing the door out of habit, and ordered a black coffee and a plate of eggs from a weary-looking waitress named Brenda. For 10 minutes the world was peaceful. Then the trouble started. It began at the counter. A young man in his late 20s, sporting a tactical cap and a tight, grunt-style t-shirt, kept glancing over at Nathaniel's booth. The man, Tyler Collins, was a local who had famously washed out of Army basic training, but compensated by adopting an aggressively militaristic civilian persona. Tyler's eyes were locked on the small gold pin on Nathaniel's chest. Tyler slid off his stool and swaggered over to the booth, holding his smartphone chest high. The red recording light was already blinking. "Hey, buddy," Tyler said, his voice loud enough to cut through the diner's ambient noise. "I noticed your pin. You a SEAL?" Nathaniel looked up from his coffee, his expression unreadable. He had dealt with interrogations from hardened insurgents. A kid with a smartphone wasn't going to rattle him. "I served, yes," Nathaniel replied quietly. "Have a good morning." Tyler didn't leave. Instead, he stepped closer, angling the camera to get a better shot of Nathaniel's face. "Served? Where? You don't look like a SEAL to me. You look like a guy trying to get a free breakfast. What was your bud's class number?" "Look, man," Nathaniel said, keeping his voice perfectly level, a textbook de-escalation tactic. "I'm just here to eat my breakfast and drink my coffee. I'm not looking for a problem." "Stolen valor is a problem," Tyler suddenly barked, turning slightly to ensure the rest of the diner was watching. "We got guys dying overseas, and you're sitting here wearing a trident you didn't earn. What's your commanding officer's name? Come on, phony, spit it out." Brenda, the waitress, hurried over from behind the counter. "Tyler, leave the man alone. Stop causing a scene or I'm calling the police." "Call them," Tyler yelled, emboldened by the attention. He reached out and slammed his hand on Nathaniel's table, knocking the heavy ceramic mug over. Hot coffee spilled across the formica, dripping onto Nathaniel's jeans. Nathaniel stood up. He didn't move fast, but the sheer, sudden presence of him at his full height caused Tyler to stumble backward in panic. Nathaniel didn't raise a hand. He just looked at Tyler with eyes that had seen things the younger man couldn't comprehend. "I'm going to step outside," Nathaniel told Brenda calmly, tossing a $20 bill onto the dry edge of the table. "Keep the change. Sorry for the mess." Before Nathaniel could reach the door, the flashing red and blue lights of a Prescott police cruiser painted the diner's front windows. Tyler had caused enough of a disturbance that someone else had already dialed 911. Officer Bradley Mitchell strode into the diner, his hand resting instinctively on his duty belt. Mitchell was a 5-year veteran of the force, a man who viewed his badge as a license to command respect rather than earn it. He took one look at the scene. A visibly agitated white local holding a phone and a tall, stoic black stranger standing near a spilled table. Mitchell's bias made the decision for him before a single word was spoken. "What's going on here?" Mitchell demanded, glaring at Nathaniel. "Officer, thank God," Tyler said, playing the victim immediately. "This guy is a complete fraud. He's wearing a Navy SEAL trident, impersonating military personnel, and when I called him out on his stolen valor, he got aggressive and knocked his table over." Mitchell turned his chest squarely toward Nathaniel. "Is that true? You impersonating a veteran?" "No, officer," Nathaniel said softly. "I am a chief petty officer in the United States Navy. That man came to my table, started filming me, and knocked my coffee over. I was just leaving." "Let me see your military ID," Mitchell demanded, taking a step into Nathaniel's personal space. "My wallet is in the center console of my rental car, the grey Tahoe parked right outside the window," Nathaniel explained, gesturing smoothly to the parking lot. "I just brought a 20 in for breakfast. If we walk outside, I can hand it to you." Mitchell sneered, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Right, the old 'it's in the car' routine. You're not going anywhere near a vehicle. Put your hands behind your back." Brenda gasped. "Officer, he didn't do anything. Tyler started it." "Ma'am, step back," Mitchell ordered sharply. He grabbed Nathaniel's left arm with unnecessary force. Every instinct drilled into Nathaniel's nervous system screamed at him to break the officer's grip, to neutralize the threat. It would have taken him less than 2 seconds to put Mitchell on the floor. But Nathaniel was a professional. He knew the optics, he knew the law, and he knew that fighting a cop in a small town was a battle you lost, even if you won the physical fight. Nathaniel offered zero resistance. He relaxed his shoulders and placed his hands behind his back. The cold steel of the cuffs ratcheted tightly around his wrists, pinching his skin. Tyler laughed, still filming. "That's right. Haul this fake away. You're under arrest for disturbing the peace, and we'll be looking into federal fraud charges for the stolen valor." Mitchell whispered harshly into Nathaniel's ear as he frog-marched the Navy SEAL out of the diner and into the freezing morning air, shoving him into the back of the cruiser. The ride to the Prescott police precinct was agonizingly slow, entirely by Officer Mitchell's design. He took the long way, ensuring every red light gave him an opportunity to lecture the man sitting in the caged back seat. "My grandfather served 2 tours in Vietnam," Mitchell said, adjusting his rearview mirror so he could make eye contact with Nathaniel. "Real heroes, guys who bled for this country. And then there are guys like you. You buy a patch online, put on a tactical jacket, and think you can walk around getting free discounts and playing the tough guy. It makes me sick." Nathaniel sat in silence. He rested his cuffed hands against the hard plastic seat, his breathing steady, his face an impenetrable mask of calm. "Nothing to say now, huh?" Mitchell taunted. "Where did you buy the pin? Army surplus store? Online? Let me guess. You're going to tell me your service records burned up in a fire, or they're highly classified, right?" Nathaniel finally met Mitchell's eyes in the mirror. "Officer Mitchell, I strongly suggest you retrieve my wallet from the Tahoe, run my common access card, and make a few phone calls before you process this arrest. You are stepping into waters you do not understand." "Is that a threat?" Mitchell snapped, his face reddening. "It's a fact," Nathaniel replied softly. 10 minutes later, the cruiser pulled into the secure lot of the precinct. Mitchell yanked Nathaniel out of the back seat and marched him through the heavy security doors into the booking area. The precinct was quiet. Desk Sergeant William Cobb, a silver-haired 30-year veteran of the force, looked up from his paperwork. He adjusted his glasses, his eyes drifting from Mitchell's puffed-up chest to the man in handcuffs. Cobb was an excellent judge of character. The man in cuffs wasn't twitching, wasn't arguing, and wasn't avoiding eye contact. He stood with the relaxed, balanced posture of a man who was entirely comfortable in chaotic environments. "What do we have, Brad?" Cobb asked, his voice gravelly. "Got a live one, Sarge," Mitchell beamed. "Stolen Valor case, causing a public disturbance down at the Rusty Anchor. Tried to claim he was a Navy SEAL." Cobb raised an eyebrow, looking directly at Nathaniel. "Is that right, son?" "My name is Nathaniel Reed. I am an active duty Chief Petty Officer," Nathaniel said, his voice echoing slightly in the concrete room. "I asked Officer Mitchell to retrieve my wallet from my vehicle to prove my identity, but he declined." Cobb shot Mitchell a dark look. "You didn't get his ID? He said it was in his car. It's a classic stall tactic. I had a unit tow the Tahoe to the impound lot here. I'll go pull the wallet right now." Mitchell defended himself, suddenly looking a little less confident under his sergeant's gaze. "I'll prove he's a fake." Mitchell hurried out the back door to the impound lot. For 5 minutes, Cobb and Nathaniel were left alone. "Cuffs a bit tight?" Cobb asked gently. "I've had worse," Nathaniel replied. "Look," Cobb sighed, leaning over the counter. "If you really are just a guy playing dress-up, tell me now. It's a misdemeanor. We write you a ticket for the disturbance, take the pin, and you walk out of here. If you lie to me and we have to dig, it gets worse." "Sergeant," Nathaniel said, his eyes locking onto Cobb's with a piercing intensity. "I appreciate your professionalism, but I assure you, I am exactly who I say I am." The back door slammed open. Mitchell marched back in, holding a worn brown leather wallet. He practically threw it onto Cobb's desk. "Let's see the proof, tough guy." Mitchell pulled out a white plastic card and held it up triumphantly. It was a Department of Defense Common Access card, CAC. But Mitchell immediately frowned. "Look at this, Sarge," Mitchell said, pointing to the card. "I told you it was a fake. The laminate is peeling at the edges, and look at the front. It says, Armed Forces of the United States, Geneva Convention's identification card. But there's no rank insignia printed next to his picture. It just says his name. Every real military ID I've ever seen has the rank right there." Nathaniel sighed, a slow, patient exhalation. "It's a specialized operational ID. Because of the nature of my billet, I do not travel with standard rank indicators on my identification. Flip it over. Run the 10-digit DODID number on the back through NCIC. Don't tell me how to do my job," Mitchell spat. He grabbed the card and marched over to the main terminal, logging into the National Crime Information Center database, which interfaced directly with federal records. He punched in the 10-digit number aggressively, hitting the Enter key with a loud clack. Mitchell waited with a smug smile, ready for the screen to flash, "No record found." Instead, the screen froze. The standard blue interface vanished. The monitor went entirely black for 3 seconds. Then, a thick, bright red banner flashed across the screen in bold white letters. "Restricted file. Clearance level TS/SCI required. Subject identity protected. Contact Department of Defense." Mitchell stared at it. He had been a cop for 5 years and had never seen that error code. His brain, unwilling to admit a mistake, jumped to the only conclusion that fit his narrative. "Unbelievable," Mitchell scoffed, pointing at the screen. You didn't just buy a fake ID, Reed. You stole a real one and altered the barcode. You completely broke the system. The database is flagging the number as a restricted anomaly. Brad, let me see that, Cobb said, standing up and walking over to the monitor. The older sergeant looked at the red banner, and a cold knot began to form in his stomach. That didn't look like a glitch. That looked like a digital tripwire. Put him in holding cell 2, Mitchell ordered Deputy Henderson, who had just walked into the room. I'm drawing up the paperwork for federal identity theft. Nathaniel was guided into a small cell with a single metal bench. The heavy steel door slid shut with a resounding clang. Nathaniel sat down, adjusted his posture, and looked up at the security camera in the corner of the ceiling. Out at the desk, Mitchell was laughing, pouring himself a cup of coffee. Can you believe that guy? Thought he could outsmart the system. But Sergeant Cobb wasn't laughing. He was staring at the blinking red cursor on the terminal. What neither of the local cops knew was that typing that specific DOD ID number into an unsecured civilian terminal didn't just return an error message. It tripped an automated, high-level security protocol. 2,000 miles away, inside a windowless operations center at the Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, in Fort Liberty, North Carolina, a silent alarm had just triggered. Chief Petty Officer Nathaniel Reed was currently listed as active status on a highly classified readiness evaluation. His location was supposed to be completely dark. A civilian police terminal querying his operational ID was the equivalent of firing a flare gun in the middle of the night. Inside his cell, Nathaniel checked the analog watch on his wrist. It was 8:14 a.m. He closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the concrete wall. He wasn't scared. He was just waiting for the thunder, because Nathaniel knew something Officer Mitchell was about to learn the hard way. You don't kidnap a Tier 1 operator without the United States military noticing. And when they noticed, they moved fast. 2,000 miles away, the atmosphere inside the Joint Operations Center at Fort Liberty was a stark contrast to the sleepy precinct in Prescott. The room was a cavernous, climate-controlled vault illuminated by the cool blue glow of dozens of high-resolution monitors. Analysts and communications specialists worked in a state of quiet, hyper-focused efficiency. At precisely 8:14 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, a dedicated terminal at the watch commander's desk flashed a brilliant, pulsing crimson. An automated siren, low but insistent, chirped 3 times. Captain David Hayes, a silver-haired, battle-hardened officer who had spent 2 decades commanding naval special warfare units, immediately stepped away from a briefing table and approached the desk. "Report," Hayes snapped, leaning over the seated analyst. "Sir, we just received a ping on an active file," the analyst replied, his fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard. "It's a Tier 1 operational ID, Chief Petty Officer Nathaniel Reed." Hayes's brow furrowed. Reed was currently on a 48-hour authorized liberty to visit a Gold Star family. He was supposed to be completely off the grid, resting before his team's next deployment cycle. "Where is the ping originating from?" "NCIC database query, sir. Someone just ran his 10-digit DOD identifier. Originating terminal is..." The analyst squinted at the geospatial readout overlaying the screen. "Prescott Police Department, Prescott, Arizona. Specifically, a civilian law enforcement terminal." "Is Reed in custody?" Hayes asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous, icy register. "Given the terminal location and the nature of the query, it is highly probable, sir. The system automatically locked out the local user and threw up a restricted banner to protect his operational cover." Hayes didn't hesitate. He knew Nathaniel Reed. He knew the man's character, his flawless service record, and the fact that Reed would never instigate a situation requiring police intervention. If local law enforcement had a Navy SEAL in handcuffs, they had made a colossal error. "Get me the main line for the Prescott precinct," Hayes ordered, grabbing a secure headset. "And patch in the FBI field office in Phoenix. Have them put a liaison agent on standby. We are shutting this down right now." Back in Prescott, Sergeant William Cobb was staring at the black screen with the red text. The uneasy feeling in his gut had metastasized into full-blown dread. He had been a cop since the late 80s. He knew the difference between a fake ID bought in a back alley and a piece of government technology that actively fought back when probed. Officer Mitchell, oblivious to the impending storm, was aggressively typing on a secondary computer, filling out a booking sheet for federal identity theft and impersonation of a military officer. "I'm telling you, Sarge, we're going to get a commendation for this," Mitchell bragged, hitting print on the keyboard. "This guy is a professional con artist. We take him down, the local news is going to eat it up. Tyler's probably already posted the video to Facebook." "Shut up, Brad," Cobb said quietly, his eyes never leaving the frozen terminal. Before Mitchell could react to the reprimand, the heavy multi-line phone on Cobb's desk rang. It wasn't the standard digital trill of the local lines. It was line 1, the dedicated federal and state emergency routing line. It almost never rang. Cobb picked up the heavy receiver. "Prescott Police, desk Sergeant Cobb." "Sergeant Cobb," a voice boomed through the earpiece. It was a voice that possessed the kind of effortless authority that commanded aircraft carriers and moved armies. "This is Captain David Hayes, United States Navy, calling from the Joint Special Operations Command. To whom am I speaking?" Cobb swallowed hard. His mouth suddenly felt like it was stuffed with cotton. "You're speaking to the shift supervisor, sir." "Excellent," Hayes said, though there was zero warmth in the word. "Sergeant, 3 minutes ago, a terminal in your precinct queried a highly restricted Department of Defense identification number. I need you to confirm, right now, if you have a black male, approximately 6'2", 220 pounds, in your custody." Cobb closed his eyes. "Yes, sir, we do." "And on what charges?" Hayes demanded. Cobb looked over at Mitchell, who was now holding the freshly printed booking sheets and looking confused by Cobb's pale complexion. "The arresting officer brought him in for disturbing the peace, sir, and suspected stolen valor, impersonation of a military officer." The silence on the line was deafening. When Hayes spoke again, his voice was a lethal whisper. "Sergeant Cobb, I am going to explain the reality of your current situation with absolute clarity. The man sitting in your holding cell is Chief Petty Officer Nathaniel Reed. He is a decorated active duty operator with naval special warfare. He has shed blood for this country on 3 different continents. His identification is restricted because his operational status is a matter of national security, not because it is fake." Cobb felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. "Captain, I am not finished." Hayes cut him off smoothly. "You have unlawfully detained a federal asset based on a profound lack of investigatory diligence. Furthermore, the FBI field office in Phoenix has just been alerted to this civil rights violation. You are to immediately release Chief Reed, return all of his property, and ensure he is treated with the utmost respect. If he is not out of those handcuffs in the next 2 minutes, I will have federal agents swarming your precinct before your lunch break. Do you understand me, Sergeant?" "Crystal clear, Captain. It's being handled immediately," Cobb said. "Put the arresting officer on the phone," Hayes ordered. Cobb lowered the receiver. He looked at Mitchell, his expression a mix of anger and profound pity. "Brad, it's for you." "Who is it?" Mitchell asked, taking the receiver. "Officer Mitchell." Hayes's voice blasted through the earpiece. loud enough that Cobb could hear the tinny echo. "I understand you are the one who determined my chief petty officer is a fraud. I strongly suggest you rethink your career path, son, because after the Department of the Navy and the federal government are done reviewing this unlawful arrest, you will be lucky to find work as a mall security guard. Now go uncuff my man." The line went dead with a sharp click. Mitchell stood frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear. The arrogant smirk had completely vanished from his face, replaced by the ashen pallor of a man who had just stepped on a landmine and heard the click. "Sarge," Mitchell stammered, his hand trembling as he placed the receiver back on the cradle. "Was that? That was the Pentagon, you absolute idiot," Cobb growled, standing up and grabbing the ring of cell keys from his belt. "Grab his wallet. Grab his jacket. You and I are going to cell 2 right now, and you are going to pray that man doesn't decide to sue this department into the bedrock." The walk down the short cinder-block hallway felt like a death march for Officer Mitchell. His heart hammered violently against his ribs. The narrative in his head, the heroic cop taking down a fraudulent scumbag, had shattered into a million sharp, terrifying pieces. Sergeant Cobb stopped in front of holding cell 2. He looked through the reinforced glass window. Nathaniel Reed was sitting exactly as he had been left. Back straight, hands resting comfortably on his knees, his expression completely tranquil. He didn't look angry. He looked like a man who knew exactly how the world worked. Cobb slid the heavy key into the lock and turned it. The door swung outward. "Chief Reed," Cobb said, his tone entirely different now, deferential, respectful. "I apologize for the delay. Please, step out." Nathaniel stood up smoothly and walked out of the cell. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He just looked at Mitchell, who was standing awkwardly against the wall, clutching Nathaniel's wallet and fleece jacket like a shield. "Uncuff him, Brad," Cobb ordered sharply. Mitchell stepped forward, his hands shaking so badly he struggled to get the tiny handcuff key into the slot. "Sir, I was just following standard procedure based on a civilian complaint. I thought—" "You didn't think, officer," Nathaniel interrupted, his voice low and steady. It wasn't a yell, but it carried a weight that made Mitchell flinch. The steel cuffs clicked open, and Nathaniel rubbed his wrists slowly, feeling the blood rush back into his hands. Nathaniel took his wallet and jacket from Mitchell's trembling hands. He carefully slipped the jacket on, ensuring the subdued gold trident was resting perfectly on his chest. "You saw a black man wearing a badge of honor, and your immediate assumption was that it must be stolen," Nathaniel said, looking directly into Mitchell's eyes. "You didn't investigate. You didn't verify. You let a kid with a smartphone and a chip on his shoulder dictate how you wielded your authority. That badge on your chest is supposed to protect the innocent, not serve your ego." Mitchell swallowed hard, unable to meet Nathaniel's gaze. "Yes, sir." Cobb stepped forward. "Chief Reed, on behalf of the Prescott Police Department, I am profoundly sorry. The charges are entirely dropped. We will expunge the arrest record locally. If there is anything we can do—" "There is," Nathaniel said, turning to Cobb. "The man who assaulted me in the diner, Tyler Collins. He destroyed my property and initiated a false police report. He also recorded the entire incident. I want a cruiser sent to his residence. I want him cited for assault and filing a false report, and I want it on record." "Consider it done," Cobb nodded immediately. "I'll dispatch Deputy Henderson right now. And one more thing," Nathaniel said, his eyes shifting back to Mitchell. "My command will be following up regarding this civil rights violation. I highly recommend you start packing your locker, Officer Mitchell, because you don't possess the temperament to carry a firearm." Without waiting for a response, Nathaniel turned and walked down the hallway. He pushed open the heavy security doors and stepped out into the crisp Arizona morning. His grey Tahoe had already been moved from the impound lot back to the front spaces, courtesy of a frantic order from Cobb. As Nathaniel started the engine, he watched through the precinct window. He could see Cobb furiously dressing down Mitchell, pointing a harsh finger at the younger officer's chest. Later that afternoon, the karma came full circle. Tyler Collins proudly uploaded his video to social media, titling it, "Fake SEAL Gets Arrested." But within 2 hours, the local news broke the actual story, backed by a statement from the Prescott Chief of Police, apologizing to an active duty hero. Tyler's video backfired spectacularly. The internet's wrath descended upon him, exposing his own failed military record, and the local police arrived at his door to issue his criminal citations. Officer Bradley Mitchell was placed on indefinite unpaid administrative leave pending a federal review, a review that ultimately forced his resignation from law enforcement entirely. But Nathaniel Reed didn't care about the viral fame or the downfall of the men who wronged him. That afternoon, he drove up a quiet, winding road into the mountains, pulling up to a modest ranch house. A woman stepped out onto the porch, wiping her hands on an apron, a warm smile breaking across her face. Nathaniel stepped out of the Tahoe, the gold trident gleaming in the afternoon sun. He wasn't a hero for the internet, and he didn't need a police officer's validation. He was a brother keeping a promise. He walked up the steps, enveloped Gregory's widow in a tight hug, and finally found the peace he had been looking for. If this story of true honor and instant karma got your blood pumping, don't leave just yet. Make sure you hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs